it's you again. Welcome back. Everything here is as usual. Oh, hi, I'm Marc. I've been a professional artist for years, and now I teach art for a living. In this final episode of YouTube Art School, in this studio, I'll show you 10 of my favorite exercises I usually recommend to my students to develop their most fundamental, their most important drawing skills when drawing digitally or traditionally too, I guess. And I'm moving on Monday, so the next episode is going to be in the new studio. Very exciting. Oh, quickly, let's get this class started. Alright, class is in session. Pay attention. And pay the class fee of either one like or one sub. It's good value guaranteed. Or you get your money back. Today we'll look at 10 exercises to help you master the basics of anything art related. Just like learning to throw a football or shoot a basketball in a hoop, repeated practice is needed, but there is such a thing as good practice and bad practice. So in order of difficulty, here are my 10 favorite exercises to develop your most basic, most important art skills fast. We're gonna start with some basic pen control exercises. Something I used to do a lot of when I was much younger, and something I still do whenever I have paper to doodle on. Long, continuous curves. With this, just like with the other exercises about pen control, you want to go relatively fast, so it's definitely not a short wrist stroke. You gotta use your elbow and shoulder a bit. The actual exercise is to draw a bunch of them as close to each other as possible, but never touching, and increase difficulty by increasing your speed. The second exercise helps practice one of the most fundamental shapes you'll ever draw. The circle. The circle. Again, as a doodle, practice this lots and lots. We use the circle as a construction shape for character mannequins, for head constructions. Again, you want to use your elbow instead of your wrist. Drawing with your wrist, touching the canvas limits the range of movement too much. And if it helps, you can start by tracing a plus first, before you draw your circle, or just a symmetry line maybe. Then draw the circle. That might help. The third exercise I recommend is for pressure dexterity, which is particularly important for digital art. Using a basic painting brush with brush size tied to the pen pressure, practice drawing nice, clean strokes that start very fine, then get very bold. The smoother the transition from fine to bold, the better. This is great practice for shading later. Smooth blending is all about pen pressure control. And by the way, these are just a tiny sample of all the exercises that you'll find for the various classes in my complete art education program, Art School for Digital Artists. I'm celebrating reaching 11,000 students, so if you're looking for the best art education right from the comfort of your home, check the link here in the top right corner of the screen or down in the description below to learn more, and make sure you use the coupon code down there as well to save big on the total. Valid until the end of the month only. Don't miss out! The fourth exercise then is back to stroke dexterity. Draw long, straight lines, or as straight as you can draw them. Both horizontal lines, probably the hardest, and vertical lines, the easiest in my opinion. Again, not a wrist stroke. You gotta use the entire arm for this. Your palm should not be touching the screen or the paper when you do this. This is another pretty relaxing exercise, and you'll know your lines are straight if you end up with nice even squares or rectangles once you've filled the sheet. Look at this. Now for the fifth exercise, and the last when it comes to pen control, color blending. You can do this in many different ways, but the simplest is probably to take two very distinct colors, even, black and white, and blend them as smoothly as possible into a nice gradient. To start off easy, pick up a brush that has soft edges, and then when you start to consistently get good results, like a really nice clean gradient, well, increase difficulty by switching to a hard edge brush. That's much harder. You'll see as I do this, I'm constantly color picking the in-between color to get the smoothest results. It's tricky, but this is shading 101 right here. If you can do this, you can technically shade like a pro. Now, for the second half of these exercises, we'll focus more on drawing skills rather than pen dexterity. So the sixth exercise is to draw ribbons. Two parallel lines that are slightly offset, basically, joined at the tip to form a long, narrow rectangle that's kind of floating in the wind. This is a fantastic practice for drawing hair and folds. It's also a lot harder than it seems, especially when you introduce a bit of perspective into it. The seventh exercise will help train your perception of volumes in space. It starts with a previous exercise we did when we were drawing circles, except now we're in 3D. Drawing spheres. The additional challenge this time around is to introduce a vertical and horizontal symmetry line on the sphere. Drawing the sphere in different angles will mean that we have to adjust the curves of those symmetry lines. It's a challenging shape to draw, and one that's fundamental to drawing heads or faces in perspective, among other things. The next exercise challenges another aspect of your understanding of volumes, more like depth perception. You start by drawing a square plane or a rectangle in perspective. You can draw it from any angle, it really doesn't matter, and it should look like a, deformed trapezium, basically. Now, the challenging part is finding the center of that plane, considering the perspective we're dealing with in each case. As you go towards the horizon, things tend to seem smaller. So the center is never quite in the middle here. It's always going to be slightly closer to the shorter side, which only seems shorter because it's further away from us. You want to try guessing where that'll be, and with some practice, you'll be able to spot it pretty accurately. The longer the trapezium shape, the harder this gets. To double check where the center actually is once you've tried this, you just gotta draw a straight line from the opposite corners and, X marks the spot. That's our center. It's pretty close. Now, the ninth exercise, only 2 to go, is to draw simple boxes, or complex boxes, but from different perspectives. You'll want to draw the exact same volume as if it was rotating almost. From the front, 3/4 view, the side, the back, from below, from above. It's a very challenging exercise, but it's absolutely core to the fundamental of construction. This is the kind of stuff that will allow you to draw anything from imagination eventually. And then finally, the last exercise is gesture drawing. For anything. Not just people, but animals too, structures, anything. Gesture drawing is all about simplification of a complex structure, especially when we think of the human body, for example. We have muscles, there's lights and shadows, colors, but we ignore all of that when we focus on gesture drawing. It's all about extracting the essence of the pose and the proportions. We observe something complex, and the challenge is to simplify it in as few strokes as possible. This is definitely a jump compared to the rest of the exercises, but it's one of the most important art fundamentals, so get to it. I have a full class on the topic too, so check that out if you need help with it. Link in the top right corner of the screen and down in the description. And that's gonna wrap it up for this week's class. I recommend carrying a cheap sketch pad and practicing those exercises every chance you get. You gotta get them reps in, bro. It's like working out muscles. In the short term, you might not notice the gains when you look in the mirror, but if you keep it up long enough, those art gains will build up little by little to something that you can't not notice. Everything when it comes to drawing will be much easier if you consistently practice these exercises. Do it now. Also, if you want to test out the best line drawing brush that exists on this planet, the one I use for most of this video, it's my favorite and you can get for absolutely free, link in the video description. Go grab it if you haven't already. Now, make sure you're subscribed with notifications enabled to be on time for next week's class, live from the new studio. See you then. Oh, and meanwhile, check out these other art classes I think you'll enjoy.